Okay, so round three of the 2025 NRL season is now in the books. Some really interesting matchups over the weekend, some really interesting scorelines, and some teams are still winless. And there are some surprises where some teams sit on the NRL ladder. So the Storm Panthers started the weekend. It was a 30-point to 24 win to the Storm. This was a very, very intriguing contest with momentum swings both ways. Grand final rematch. The Storm come out on top. I think they weren't perfect, and they did show some vulnerabilities in this game. The Panthers, Nathan Cleary, that concussion, let's see how long he's out for. But in saying that, Tuolangi and Cole had some real good flashes in there. The Panthers are looking more human already this season, so there is some hope for some of the other teams in the competition that the Storm and the Panthers won't run away with it. The Panthers are 1-2 to start the year. The Storm are 2-0 with obviously the bye round as well. So the Storm are still unbeaten, but there were vulnerabilities in the Storm performance the other night. There were some defensive lapses. There were some momentum swings they didn't cope with very well. And the Panthers, under strength, I think is a good way to describe it. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they play without Nathan Cleary next week, because he's got a mandatory 11-day stand down because it was a Category 1. So that's just very interesting subplot. The Warriors Roosters finished 14 points to 6 to the Warriors, so they've bounced back from that opening round defeat to Canberra and Vegas with 2 back-to-back wins. The Roosters, coming off last week with the shock win over the Panthers, they were disappointing. I think the Roosters are in for a long season. Yes, they got that shocking underdog win against the Panthers, but this was back to reality for the Roosters. I think there's a lot of issues with the Roosters roster this year. It's lacking a little bit of bite. There seems to be a lack of confidence. There are still injuries impacting this team, but they weren't at the races. The Warriors were the better side and deserved to win. I'm surprised by the scoreline though. I am surprised by the scoreline considering how open both these sides have been to start the season. I think the Warriors, are going to definitely bounce back from last year's disappointing season. They've shown enough so far last week and this week that I think they're starting to build confidence with their combinations, and they're starting to build confidence with the halves since Shaun Johnson retired. This was a very confident performance. Not a perfect performance. There's been a lot of errors in a lot of the games this weekend, but the Warriors, I think, can be quite happy with winning 2 out of 3 to start the season in the post-Shaun Johnson era. The Broncos Cowboys 26-16 to the Broncos. Good bounce back win for the Broncos, but they weren't perfect. There's still there was a lot of mistakes in this game. The Cowboys had a lot more ball and didn't do enough with it when they were on top, which allowed the Broncos to stay in the game and then take the lead. Cowboys, I have some concerns about the Cowboys. Although it was a much better performance, there's still a lot of errors and still a lot of defensive frailties with the Cowboys. And they're winless to start the season, which is a concern because I predicted them to do quite well this season. So I'm a little bit disappointed with them. The Broncos, even though they win, and they win a crucial game against a big rival, there was a lot of errors in this game. And it's going to be interesting to see how their performances go carrying on from this. They were disappointing last week against the Raiders. And while they won scrappily. It wasn't the best Broncos performance. There was a lot of... Reece Walsh, for example, made a lot of errors, a lot of unnecessary errors. Yes, you want your players, your star players and creative players to take risks occasionally, but at the right times. There was a lot of handling errors and some of the decision-making from Reece Walsh. I have a few concerns there with his personal confidence, considering in the opening round against the Roosters, he was brilliant. Last week against the Raiders and this week, that was a bit concerning. The Sharks 27, the Rabbitohs 12. Good solid win for the Sharks. Again, not perfect. They have got some injuries. They are missing some players. The Bunnies, this is a reality check for the Bunnies a little bit. They've won the opening 2 rounds of the season in close games. This was a reality check to see where they actually are, and they're just not quite at the same level as some of the top teams from last year. They're still a work in progress. There's still players to come back from injury, but they were decidedly second best in this game. The Sharks are still not quite, I think, at 100% performance. There's still room for improvement for the Sharks, but again, 2-1 to start the season. They'll be quite happy with that. Win at home is important as well, and they can continue to build some momentum and some confidence. There's still areas of the Sharks game that need to iron out. Decision making at certain points, certain styles of kick and territory game, that final pass, just certain things in attack that I think the Sharks can do better, which was a concern last year. That at times in attack they did look a little bit blunt and a little bit disjointed, but I do think they are going to be a very competitive side this year. They just need to find something to take that next level to their game. The Dolphins, Tigers, Dolphins 18, Tigers 30. Back-to-back wins for the Tigers. They're in the top half of the table. I think they're in the top four. Tigers have had a really, really good start to the season. The Dolphins, again, another team yet to win a game. There are some concerns that I have about the Dolphins. They were in the game, and then second half they just fell apart completely. The Tigers just were far too comfortable in the second half, and I think there's still a lot of room for improvement with this Tigers side. They are a very young team. Benji Marshall is a very inexperienced coach, but the players are now starting to respond to them. And I think their record last year was better than and how they played last year was actually better than their actual record suggested. There were some green shoots last year. They've added Luai, for example. They've added Taruva, for example, and that's definitely created some energy and more positivity around the side. And the way they played. They are going to make errors. They are a young side. There's going to be mistakes in there, but they're playing in the right way. They're playing with more energy, more confidence. The Dolphins, really concerning, and Tristan Wolfe is going to start getting some pressure unless results change soon. So that's 3 defeats to start the season. Not a good start. The post-Wayne Bennett era is not going well. The Titans, 26, Knights 6. This was a dominant win by the Titans. The Knights just imploded. The Knights were dreadful. The Titans, good solid response to an iffy showing last week in their first game of the season. So they're 1-1. It was a good solid response though from the Titans. They have the attacking pieces there to really trouble sides, and defensively they were very, very solid as well. Massive improvement on last week. I think the Titans are going to be better than last season if they can keep their key players fit. So Campbell and Brimson in the halves, that's going to develop as a partnership. I still think there's a lot of room for improvement, but Jaden Campbell had a very, very good game, and he's only going to improve with more confidence and more stability with AJ Brimson and learning his role from fullback to being in the halves. He had a very, very good game. A couple of errors, but he's new to the position on a full-time basis. It's not his natural position. Naturally, he is a fullback, potentially a winger, so he's in a new role in the middle, in the spine. He had a very, very good game. He had a very, very impactful role on the game as well. And the Titans, they played very, very well. They played at a good pace as well, kept the energy levels high. That was a really good performance. The Eels 8, Bulldogs 16 to start today's play. The Bulldogs obviously missing Burton and Kickout. That did disrupt them. They weren't as effective in attack. But in saying that, they played scrappily. They didn't play well, but they come away with their third straight win to start the season. Who would have had money on that to start the year? This win, although not brilliant, and they weren't at their best, proves that the Bulldogs, I think, are definitely the real deal. Last year was not just a one-off. They are building very, very well. And it's a sign of a good side that they can win well when not playing very well. So I think when Burton and Kickout come back into the team, that's going to help. So there was a bit of disruption. But in saying that, the Eels were better. We'll give them that. The Eels were better. They cannot be as bad as the first 2 weeks. However, they are also winless to start the season. And they couldn't take advantage of a wounded Bulldogs side in regards to the injuries that the Bulldogs had coming into this game and the players missing. And the Bulldogs, while not playing well and were giving the Eels opportunities to stay in the game, they had enough to get over the line. The Bulldogs were the better side in the first half. The Eels were, at times you worried, could they fall apart? The Eels stuck in there. The performance was better, but it's going to be a long season for the Eels. I'm really concerned for the Eels, Dolphins and Cowboys so far, because that's 3 sides yet to win a game, and the Eels just against a fully fit Bulldogs side like the Bulldogs last week, that could have been a cricket score. I believe that if the Bulldogs had all their players available, the Eels, while they played better, just weren't going to hang with them. I'm concerned about the fitness of the Eels, the confidence. And you can't just say, oh, because Mitch Moses is missing, that's the only reason. That's the main reason why they're struggling. There's more to this. I think the squad turnover they've had in the off season, new coach implemented, trying to implement new ideas and new style of play, it's just not clicking, and the confidence is low, and it's going to be tough. They've got to win soon, otherwise the pressure on Jason Riles will start to mount, and questions will be asked of the board. The Sea Eagles Raiders. Good bounce back win for the Sea Eagles, considering last week they lost. The Raiders, young team. I mean, as a Raiders fan, I expect defeats like this to happen this season. They are a very young, inexperienced team. Only 3 players with over 100 appearances in the NRL in the starting lineup. The Sea Eagles had 10 players with over 100 games experience. So there's one aspect of this. But for the first 20 minutes, it was just the Sea Eagles had all the ball, but the Raiders were defending really, really well. And then the disallowed try, the sin bin to Horsburgh, and then the Sea Eagles exploded and the Raiders imploded towards the second half of the first half. They could barely have their hands on the ball. The Sea Eagles had up to 80% possession at times, and the Raiders were starved for the ball, and they were just scoring try after try after try. Ruben Garrick scored 4 on the night. Bullymore scored 2 on the night. The second half was a bit more of a fair reflection, I think, of where the Raiders are at. They showed some fight in the second half. They get 2 tries, but the Sea Eagles had enough. Garrick gets 2 tries in the second half out of his 4. The Raiders, as I say, showed a bit of fight in the second half, but the game was done at half time. But this is an inexperienced side, and I'm going to expect results like this every now and then. They've had a very, very positive start to the season, but Joey Tarpanay being out, I think, well, they got away with it last week against the Broncos, and I was concerned going into that game against the Broncos, young, inexperienced side against a very confident side coming out of round 1, that might be an awkward one. They did very well last week. Maybe they were overconfident, but they just didn't get started. They couldn't get their hands on the ball, and the Sea Eagles rightly deserved to put 40 past them. And they were the top scorers this weekend with the Sea Eagles. So when the Sea Eagles are on form and they're playing well, they didn't play well last week, their attack looks quite terrifying. And the Raiders, I mean, the first 2 rounds have been very good defensively. So, okay, inexperienced side throws a bit of a duck egg there, but it's a one-off game. Hopefully this young Raiders side can respond next week. That's going to be key. The Sea Eagles, however, I mean, if they can get confidence, they could be very, very dangerous. But Paseka's gone down with a Achilles injury, so let's see how that impacts their forward pack a little bit. They have got some players out as well from their forward pack, so this wasn't their strongest lineup they could have put on the field, which again is scary considering the Raiders were unbeaten going into this game. The Dragons had the bye. They are also winless to start the season. So there's 4 teams still winless to start the season, and already we're starting to see a clear pattern with some the sides that we are seeing struggle already. I think will still be down the bottom come the end of the season. There's some surprises like the Tigers, for example. The Bulldogs being 3 from 3. I don't think anyone would have any money on that to start the season. First time since 2012 that the Bulldogs have won their first 3 games. They did pretty well in 2012. So the Bulldogs, I think, could be the real deal. They could be an underdog. They could be a dark horse. The Storm Panthers was a brilliant match to watch as a neutral. I will say that. Both sides did show some weaknesses, however, that could be exploited by other teams. So I don't think the Storm, for example, are going to go the entire season unbeaten. I don't think that's going to happen. There is some weaknesses there. And especially when momentum swings happened, they showed some vulnerability defensively, and they can be targeted in certain areas. The Panthers, I think they're starting to look a little bit more human. This could be the season where they do fall back, but we're only 3 rounds in, so we have to see how the rest of the season goes. They're going to get players back, new combinations. The Panthers system works. The Storm system works. So there's a reason why these 2 were the 2 pre-season favourites. We'll get a better idea after, let's say, round 5, round 10, if that's going to pan out. But from me for now, thank you very much for watching. Place your thoughts on round 3 in the comment section below, and then we'll have the round 4 preview coming up quite shortly in our next video. But for me for now, thank you very much for watching, and I'll have some more content for you all very, very soon.